Okay, so in part one of the unit circle, we explored how to determine the measure of the angles in radians and in degrees. So now we're going to look at sine and cosine. So what we need to do is you need to memorize the measures for the first quadrant. So I know we said before that the coordinates of this point are 1, 0, 0, 1. This is negative 1, 0. And then this would be 0, negative 1. And remember, it's a unit circle, so the radius is 1. All right, so now you, my friends, are going to memorize the measures for sine 30, which is the same as cosine 60. Okay, so now I know that sine 30 is 1/2, which means that cosine 30, you're gonna have to memorize that it's radical 3/2. So here we go. For 30, let me just move it over. Okay. So this is over here is 30 or pi over 6. So sine 30 is 1/2. Sine is always the second number, which means that cosine 30 is going to be radical 3/2. And flip them for the 60-degree angle. So this should be cosine 60 is 1/2. Sine 60 is radical 3/2. Okay? Everything else is going to come from there. So it's going to be the angle formed with the x-axis. So this here, oh no. Okay. So over here, I'll just, this and this are going to form the same angle with the x-axis, which means they're going to have the same values for sine and cosine. So radical 3/2, comma 1/2. You just have to adjust the sign. So first quadrant, everything is positive. Second quadrant, that means the x is going to be negative. So that's a negative. And then this one and this one are going to have the same measure if you look at the angle being formed with the x-axis. So 1/2 radical 3/2. And what is going to be negative is the x. So that's how I figured it out. For the black one, that is going to be the 45-degree angle, which means sine and cosine are going to be the same, which means it's going to be radical 2/2 for both. You are going to memorize that. Both positives for x over here. The measure is going to be the same. You need to adjust the signs. X is negative, so there you go. And the same process applies to all the other angles. So this is going to have the same measure. This angle here, the values for sine and cosine, remember similar triangles are going to be the same. So I want this, I want red. So red. So this one is this one, and this one have the same sine and cosine values. So radical 3/2, comma 1/2. But remember, we are always looking at the angle formed with the x-axis, and the same is going to be true about this one, right? So radical 3/2 and 1/2. Just adjust the signs. So here, both are negative, and here x is positive, y is negative. And then we need to do the same for this two. This is going to have the same values as that one. So we're just going to switch into 1/2, comma radical 3/2. And then same thing for this one over here. And then we adjust the signs. So 1/2 radical 3 over 2. Now, over here, third quadrant, they're both negative. Over here, the x is going to be positive, the y is negative. And then we just have to do the same process for the 45, all the angles that I have 45 as a reference angle. So over here, this is all radical 2 over 2, radical 2 over 2. Same thing here, radical 2 over 2, radical 2 over 2 for sine and cosine. Now over on the third quadrant, they're both negative. And then fourth quadrant, x is positive, y is negative. And that way you'll be able to see all the values for sine, cosine, tangent. Well, tangent is just y over x or sine over cosine. And that way you can find out the value of any angle, essentially any of the angles that have a 36 or 60 or 45 degree angle as a reference angle. Okay, hope that helps.